Sarah Mitchell moved into the quiet suburb of Pinewood, Virginia on a Tuesday morning in late September. At 52 years old, she carried herself with a calm confidence that came from 2 decades of service most people couldn't imagine. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her modest Honda was packed with just the essentials. After 20 years as a Navy SEAL, one of the first women to break through that barrier, she was finally ready for the peace she'd earned. The neighborhood seemed perfect: tree-lined streets, well-kept lawns, and the kind of small-town atmosphere where people still waved to strangers. Sarah had chosen Pinewood specifically for its community recreation center, where she planned to teach self-defense classes to local women. It was her way of giving back, of using her skills to help others feel safe. By Thursday, she'd joined the rec center's gym. It was nothing fancy: a few treadmills, some free weights, and a small pool. But it was clean and affordable, and Sarah didn't need much. She'd learned long ago that real strength didn't come from expensive equipment. That's where she first encountered Brittany Sanderson and her two friends, Madison and Ashley. They were in their early 30s, dressed in matching designer workout sets that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly grocery budget. The three women had clearly claimed the gym as their territory, taking up the mirror space and speaking loudly about their personal trainers and upcoming vacations. Sarah didn't pay them much attention at first. She was there to work out, not socialize. She found a quiet corner and began her routine, the same disciplined exercises that had kept her mission ready for 2 decades. "Excuse me," Brittany's voice cut through the gym. "That's actually Madison's spot." Sarah looked up from her stretches. "I'm sorry." "That corner, we always use it for our cool-down sessions." Brittany stood with her hands on her hips, her two friends flanking her like backup singers. Sarah glanced around the nearly empty gym. "There's plenty of space. I'm sure we can share." Brittany's perfectly made-up face twisted into a sneer. "Look, I don't know how things worked wherever you came from, but here, we have our routines. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at the senior center down the street." The comment stung, though Sarah kept her expression neutral. She'd faced down armed enemies in 3 different countries. She wasn't about to let some suburban bully rattle her. "I'll move," Sarah said quietly, gathering her mat. "No problem." As she walked away, she heard Madison whisper loudly enough to be heard, "Did you see those ratty old gym clothes? Someone should tell her this isn't goodwill." The 3 women laughed, and Sarah felt her jaw tighten, but she kept walking. "Pick your battles," her old commander used to say. "Not everything requires engagement." Over the next 2 weeks, the harassment continued. Brittany and her friends seemed to make it their mission to make Sarah uncomfortable. They'd take the treadmill next to hers and talk loudly about how older people should know their limitations. They'd spray excessive perfume near her workout area, knowing it would trigger her combat-related sensitivity to strong scents. Once, Madison, accidentally, knocked Sarah's water bottle across the floor, spilling it everywhere. Sarah endured it all with quiet dignity. She'd survived Hell Week, survived missions that would give most people nightmares. She could certainly survive some mean girls who'd never grown up. But she noticed other things too. The way the gym staff seemed afraid of Brittany, whose father apparently sat on the town council. The way other gym members would avoid eye contact, clearly not wanting to become targets themselves. There was an elderly woman named Dorothy who'd stopped coming to her water aerobics class after Brittany mocked her swimsuit. A young mother named Jennifer who now only came during off hours to avoid confrontation. Brittany Sanderson ruled this little corner of Pinewood through intimidation and cruelty, and no one dared to stand up to her. That was about to change. On a rainy Friday afternoon, Sarah was finishing her workout when she heard raised voices from the women's changing room. She recognized Jennifer's voice, shaking with tears. Sarah grabbed her towel and headed toward the sound. Whatever was happening, her instincts told her it wasn't going to end well. Sarah pushed through the changing room door to find Jennifer backed against the lockers, her face red and tear-streaked. Brittany stood inches from her, with Madison and Ashley blocking the exits. The young mother was clutching her gym bag like a shield. "I already told you I'm sorry," Jennifer was saying, her voice breaking. "I didn't know that was your locker." "Your sorry doesn't cut it," Brittany snapped. "You put your disgusting gym shoes on my bench. Do you know how much my yoga mat cost?" "It was an accident." "Everything with you people is an accident." Brittany stepped closer and Jennifer flinched. "Maybe you should just find another gym, somewhere more appropriate for your budget." Sarah's voice cut through the tension. "Leave her alone." Three heads turned toward her. Brittany's eyes narrowed with recognition and something that looked like glee. She'd been waiting for Sarah to give her a reason. "This doesn't concern you, Grandma," Brittany said. "Why don't you go take your afternoon nap?" Sarah walked calmly to Jennifer's side. "Are you okay?" she asked the younger woman gently. Jennifer nodded, wiping her eyes. "I'm fine, I should just go." "No," Sarah said firmly. "You have every right to be here." She turned to Brittany. "You three need to back off now." Madison laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the tile walls. "Or what? You gonna bore us to death with stories about the good old days?" "I'm going to ask you one more time to leave this woman alone," Sarah said, her voice level but carrying an edge that hadn't been there before. It was the voice she'd used to command respect in combat situations, though these three wouldn't recognize it. Brittany's face flushed red. In her world, she was used to people cowering, apologizing, backing down. Sarah's calm defiance was an insult she couldn't tolerate. "You know what? I'm sick of you," Brittany hissed. "Sick of you acting like you're better than everyone, coming in here with your high and mighty attitude." She shoved Jennifer aside and stepped directly into Sarah's space. "You're nothing, just another washed-up old woman trying to relive her youth. Well, here's a reality check." Brittany's hand shot out and shoved Sarah hard in the chest. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. Sarah barely moved from the shove, her core stability honed by years of training. But something shifted in her eyes, a flash of the warrior she'd been, the SEAL who'd operated in the world's most dangerous places. "Don't touch me again," Sarah said quietly. "Or what?" Brittany shoved her again, harder this time. "What are you gonna do, you old?" What happened next occurred in seconds, but Sarah saw it unfold as if in slow motion. Brittany lunged forward, her hands reaching for Sarah's throat. Madison and Ashley moved in from the sides, clearly planning to hold Sarah while Brittany finished whatever assault she had in mind. They'd done this before, Sarah realized. This wasn't spontaneous anger, it was a coordinated attack. These women had terrorized others in this exact way, knowing that no one would believe three wealthy, well-connected women would assault someone in a gym-changing room. Brittany's hands closed around Sarah's throat and squeezed. "F***CK off," Brittany snarled into her face. "You dried up old." The words died as Sarah moved. After 20 years as a Navy SEAL, certain responses were pure muscle memory. When someone tries to choke you, you don't think, you react. Sarah's hands came up in a precise motion, breaking Brittany's grip with a technique that had probably saved her life more than once in the field. She pivoted, using Brittany's own momentum against her, and suddenly the younger woman was stumbling backward. Madison grabbed Sarah's arm from behind. Another mistake. Sarah's elbow drove back into Madison's solar plexus, controlled, not hard enough to seriously injure, but enough to knock the wind out of her. Madison released her grip with a gasp, doubling over. Ashley hesitated, suddenly realizing this wasn't going as planned. "Stay back," Sarah warned, her voice carrying absolute authority now. Brittany, recovering from her stumble, let out a scream of rage and charged again. This time, Sarah was ready. She sidestepped smoothly, caught Brittany's wrist as she lunged past, and used a simple joint lock to guide the woman face first against the lockers. Not hard enough to injure, Sarah had complete control, but firm enough to end the threat. "Stop," Sarah commanded, holding Brittany in place with minimal effort. "This is over." But Brittany, unused to not getting her way, struggled violently. "Let me go. Do you know who my father is? I'll have you arrested. I'll ruin you." Jennifer stood frozen by the wall, her phone in her shaking hands. I called the police," she whispered. Sarah nodded, still maintaining her hold on Brittany. "Good. We'll wait for them together." Officer Tom Bradley had been with the Pinewood Police Department for 15 years, and he thought he'd seen everything. But the scene at the recreation center confused him. 3 well-dressed women, one with a developing bruise on her forehead, all shouting at once about being assaulted by a middle-aged woman who stood quietly to the side, her expression calm and unreadable. "She attacked us," Brittany shrieked, pointing at Sarah. "We were just changing after our workout and she went crazy. She's dangerous." Madison nodded vigorously, still rubbing her chest where Sarah's elbow had struck. "We want to press charges. Assault and battery. She could have killed us." Officer Bradley looked at Sarah, who met his gaze steadily. "Ma'am, what's your side of this?" "They attacked me," Sarah said simply. "I defended myself. There's a witness, Jennifer Martinez. She saw everything." But when Bradley looked around for this witness, the young mother had vanished. Smart woman, Sarah thought. With Brittany's connections, testifying could make her life in this town unbearable. "Convenient that your witness is gone," Brittany sneered. "It's her word against ours, officer. 3 against 1. And my father is Councilman Sanderson. I think we know how this is going to go." Bradley shifted uncomfortably. He did know Councilman Sanderson. Everyone in town did. The man had a reputation for protecting his daughter, no matter what she did. There'd been rumors over the years, incidents that got swept under the rug, complaints that disappeared. "I'm going to need you to come down to the station," he told Sarah. "All of you, will sort this out there." At the station, Sarah was separated from the other 3 women. She sat in an interview room, her hands folded calmly on the table, while Bradley tried to piece together what happened. "Look, Ms. Mitchell," he said, not unkindly. "I'm trying to help you here, but Brittany Sanderson is claiming you assaulted her and her friends without provocation, unless you've got something to back up your story." "I have the truth," Sarah said quietly. "They initiated physical contact. One of them put her hands around my throat. I responded with appropriate defensive measures." Bradley rubbed his tired eyes. 3 witnesses say differently, and Brittany's already lawyered up. Her father's attorney is on the way. Through the interview room's small window, Sarah could see Brittany in the main area of the station, talking on her phone and laughing. Already spinning the story, no doubt. Already calling in favors. The door opened, and Police Chief Richard Moss entered. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that took in every detail. "Officer Bradley, could you give us a moment?" he said. Bradley left, looking relieved to escape the situation. Chief Moss sat down across from Sarah and studied her for a long moment. "Sarah Mitchell," he said slowly. "That name rang a bell, so I ran it through our system. Interesting record you've got. 20 years Navy, most of it redacted. Honorable discharge 6 months ago with enough commendations to wallpaper a house." Sarah remained silent. "Now, I'm not military myself," Moss continued, "but my son is. Marine, currently deployed. And he's told me enough that when I see a file like yours with that many black bars through it, I know I'm looking at someone who's done things most of us can't imagine." He leaned back in his chair. "So here's what I think happened. I think Brittany Sanderson and her mean girl squad decided to pick on the wrong person. I think they got physical, and you defended yourself with training they didn't expect. Am I close?" "Yes, sir," Sarah said. Moss sighed heavily. "Problem is I can't prove it. Your witness bolted. It's 3 against 1. And Councilman Sanderson is already calling the mayor, who's calling me. They want you charged with assault." I understand, Sarah said. Do you? Moss looked at her intently. Because Brittany's father has enough pull in this town to make your life very difficult. Court case could drag on for months, legal fees, and even if you win, which you probably would, the damage to your reputation would be done. Sarah met his eyes. Chief Moss, I spent 2 decades defending people who couldn't defend themselves. I'm not about to start backing down from bullies now, no matter who their father is. A small smile crossed Moss's face. I was hoping you'd say that, because I've been watching Brittany Sanderson get away with terrorizing this town for too long. And I'm tired of it. He stood up. I'm not charging you. There's not enough evidence, and frankly, I believe your version. But Sengsun's going to push back hard. You need to be ready for that. I will be, Sarah assured him. As Moss opened the door to let her go, he paused. One more thing. You said you defended yourself with appropriate measures. In your professional opinion, if you'd actually wanted to hurt those 3 women, could you have? Sarah thought about the countless ways she'd been trained to neutralize threats. The knowledge that lived in her muscles and nerves, honed over thousands of hours of the world's most intense combat training. Yes, sir, she said quietly, very easily. That's what I thought, Moss nodded. And the fact that they walked away with nothing but some bruised egos and a bump on the head tells me everything I need to know about who the real victim was here. Sarah walked out of the police station into the evening air. Across the parking lot, Brittany sat in a Mercedes with her father, a thin, sharp-faced man in an expensive suit. They were both staring at her with expressions of pure hatred. This wasn't over. Sarah knew that. In fact, it was probably just beginning. But she'd faced worse, much worse. The next morning, Sarah woke to find her face on the front page of the Pinewood Gazette's website. The headline read, "Local woman arrested after violent attack at recreation center." The article, written by a reporter Sarah had never met, painted her as an unstable newcomer who'd viciously assaulted 3 longtime residents without provocation. Her phone had 17 missed calls from the rec center's manager, terminating her membership. Her email had a notice from the community center canceling the self-defense class she'd been scheduled to teach. By noon, her landlord had called, saying he'd received complaints about her and asking her to consider breaking her lease early. The Sengsun machine was working overtime. Sarah sat on her small porch, drinking coffee and watching the neighborhood. 2 houses down, her neighbor Mrs. Chun was watering her garden. When she caught Sarah's eye, she quickly looked away and hurried inside. The message was clear. Association with Sarah Mitchell was now toxic. Her phone rang, an unknown number. "Ms. Mitchell, this is Jempt Reeves. I'm an attorney and I'd like to speak with you about your case." Sarah almost hung up, assuming it was another harassment tactic, but something in the woman's voice made her pause. "I'm representing myself," Sarah said carefully. "I know, that's why I'm calling. I'm not with the Sengsuns. I'm calling to offer you pro bono representation if they file a civil suit, which I suspect they will." "Why would you do that?" There was a long pause. "Because Brittany Sengsun assaulted my daughter 3 years ago, pushed her down a flight of stairs at a party, broke her arm in 2 places. My daughter was too afraid to press charges. The Sengsuns paid for the medical bills and made it clear that if we pursued it, they'd destroy us." Jemp's voice cracked slightly. "I've been waiting for someone to stand up to that family. Please let me help you." Sarah felt something shift in her chest. She wasn't alone in this. "Okay," she said, "thank you." Over the next few days, more people reached out. A private message on social media from the gym's janitor, Magull, who said he'd witnessed Brittany and her friends harassing people for months and would testify if needed. An email from Dorothy, the elderly woman who'd quit water aerobics, offering to share her own story of Brittany's cruelty. But the most important contact came from Jennifer Martinez, the young mother who'd been there when it all started. They met at a coffee shop 2 towns over, where no one would recognize them. "I'm so sorry I ran," Jennifer said immediately, tears in her eyes. "I was scared. I have 2 kids and my ex-husband is already trying to get full custody. If I got involved in something public, something controversial—" "I understand," Sarah said gently. "You don't owe me anything." "But I do." Jennifer pulled out her phone. "I recorded it, the whole thing. I started recording when Brittany first cornered me because I'd been keeping a record of her harassment. I was building a case to take to the rec center board." She slid the phone across the table. "It's all there, her attacking you, everything." Sarah watched the video, her heart pounding. Clear audio of Brittany saying Usterusk sucka off as her hands closed around Sarah's throat. Visual evidence of the coordinated attack. Sarah's restrained, defensive response. It was undeniable. "Why are you showing me this now?" Sarah asked. Jennifer wiped her eyes. "Because I watched what they're doing to you. The lies, the destruction of your reputation. And I realized that if I don't stand up now, I'm just as bad as everyone else who's let that family terrorize this town. My kids deserve to grow up in a place where bullies don't win just because they have money and connections." Sarah reached across and squeezed Jennifer's hand. "Thank you. This is incredibly brave." "You're the brave one," Jennifer said. "You're the first person who ever stood up for me." That evening, Sarah met with Jempt Reeves and showed her the video. The attorney's eyes lit up. "This changes everything," Jempt said. "Not just for your case, for all of them. Every person Brittany's hurt over the years. With this evidence, we can actually do something." She leaned forward intently. "But I need to warn you. When we release this, the Senksuns will come at you with everything they have. Councilman Senksun has spent years building his power base in this town. He won't go down quietly." "I've handled worse," Sarah said. "I believe you," Jemp smiled. "There's something else you should know. Chief Moss reached out to me. Apparently, he's been quietly documenting complaints about Brittany for years, complaints that mysteriously never went anywhere. With your video as the catalyst, he thinks he can finally open a proper investigation." Sarah felt a spark of hope. Maybe this small town was ready for change after all. The next day, Jempt filed a countersuit against Brittany Senksun for assault and battery, with Jennifer's video as evidence. Within hours, the local news picked up the story. By evening, the video had been shared on social media hundreds of times. The tide was turning. But Councilman Senksun wasn't done yet. That night, Sarah's house was vandalized, eggs thrown at her windows, the word liar spray-painted across her garage door. When she called the police, a young officer came out, took a report, and quietly told her, "The chief says to document everything. This is all evidence." Sarah cleaned up the mess herself, refusing to be intimidated. She'd survived insurgent attacks and hostile territory. She could survive some spray paint and eggs. What she didn't expect was the support that began to emerge. The next morning, Mrs. Chen appeared on her doorstep with a casserole. "I'm sorry I avoided you," the elderly woman said. "That was cowardly. My husband and I would like to help however we can." Miguel, the janitor, organized other rec center employees to write statements about Brittany's behavior. Dorothy started a petition calling for the Sandersons to be held accountable. One by one, people who'd been silent for years found their courage. And Sarah realized something profound. Her 20 years as a SEAL had taught her to fight enemies with weapons. But this was a different kind of battle, one where courage was contagious, where one person's stand could inspire dozens more. The town council meeting was packed, standing room only, with people spilling out into the hallway. Sarah sat in the front row with Janet Reeves on one side and Jennifer Martinez on the other. Chief Moss stood at the back, his arms crossed, watching everything carefully. Councilman Sanderson sat at the elevated council table, his face a mask of confidence. Brittany sat beside him, playing the victim perfectly, eyes downcast, tissues in hand, the picture of wounded innocence. The meeting began with public comments. One by one, people Sarah had never met stood up to speak. An elderly man talked about how Brittany had mocked his disabled wife at the grocery store, bringing her to tears. A teenager described being bullied relentlessly by Brittany at the community pool. A small business owner revealed how Brittany had tried to get his shop shut down when he wouldn't give her free merchandise. With each testimony, the crowd grew more restless. Councilman Sanderson's confident expression began to crack. Then Janet Reeves stood up. "Council members, citizens of Pinewood," she began, her voice clear and strong. "For years, this community has lived under a shadow. We've all known that certain people were above the rules. We've all watched as complaints disappeared and victims were silenced. Today, that ends." She played Jennifer's video on the large screen at the front of the room. The crowd watched in complete silence as Brittany Sanderson's voice rang out, F***CK off, as her hands closed around Sarah's throat, as Madison and Ashley joined the attack, and as Sarah defended herself with remarkable restraint, using only the minimum force necessary to stop the assault. When the video ended, the silence stretched for a long moment. Then someone began to clap, then another. Soon the entire room was applauding and Brittany was crying, real tears this time, not staged ones. Councilman Sanderson stood up, his face red. "This is a witch hunt. My daughter is the victim here." "Your daughter committed assault and battery." Chief Moss's voice cut through the room as he walked forward. "And based on the investigation my department has been conducting, it's not the first time." He placed a thick folder on the council table. "This contains 17 documented complaints against Brittany Sanderson over the past 5 years, complaints that were never properly investigated due to political pressure." He looked directly at Councilman Sanderson. "I'm formally recommending that the district attorney file charges." The room erupted in conversation. Councilman Sanderson tried to speak, but his voice was drowned out. The mayor, an older woman named Patricia Wells, called for order. When the room finally quieted, she looked at Councilman Sanderson with barely concealed disgust. "Gerald, I think it's time you resign from this council," she said firmly. "Effective immediately." "You can't," Sanderson began. "I can and I am," Mayor Wells interrupted. "And if you fight this, I will personally ensure that every newspaper in the state knows about your years of abuse of power. Your choice." Sanderson's face went through several shades of red before settling on pale white. He gathered his papers with shaking hands, grabbed Brittany by the arm, and stormed out of the meeting hall. The room broke into applause again. But Sarah didn't feel triumphant. She felt tired and sad for a community that had suffered for so long under the weight of one family's cruelty. After the meeting, people surrounded her, thanking her, apologizing for not standing up sooner, asking her to reconsider teaching that self-defense class. Mrs. Chen hugged her tightly. "You gave us our town back," she whispered. Chief Moss approached, extending his hand. "You know, we could use someone like you on our force, someone who understands real courage." Sarah smiled. "I'm retired from that kind of service, Chief, but I appreciate the offer." "Then what will you do?" he asked. Sarah looked around the room at all these people who'd found their voices, their courage. "I think I'll stay in Pinewood, teach those self-defense classes, maybe help people understand that standing up to bullies doesn't always require military training. Sometimes it just requires one person willing to say enough." 3 months later, Sarah's self-defense class was the most popular program at the rec center. She taught women of all ages, from teenagers to grandmothers, not just how to protect themselves physically, but how to stand up for themselves in all aspects of life. Jennifer Martinez became her assistant instructor. Dorothy helped organize fundraisers to make the classes free for anyone who couldn't afford them. Miguel made sure the changing rooms were always safe and monitored. Brittany Sanderson pleaded guilty to assault and battery, and was sentenced to community service and mandatory anger management. Her father lost his council seat and much of his influence. The local newspaper ran a series on abuse of power in small-town politics that won a state journalism award. But the real change was quieter and deeper. Pinewood became a place where people looked out for each other, where kindness mattered more than connections, where bullies no longer had power simply because everyone was too afraid to stop them. One evening, Sarah was locking up the rec center after a class when a young woman approached her nervously. "Ms. Mitchell, I just wanted to thank you. I've been dealing with harassment at work, and after taking your class, I finally filed a complaint with HR. They're investigating my supervisor now." Sarah smiled warmly. "You did that yourself. I just showed you that you already had the strength." Walking to her car, Sarah thought about her 20 years as a Navy SEAL, all the missions, all the operations that would remain classified forever. She'd saved lives and served with honor, and she was proud of that service. But standing up in a gym-changing room, defending a scared young mother, and inspiring a town to reclaim its dignity, that might have been her most important mission yet. Because real strength, Sarah had learned, wasn't about how hard you could hit or how many enemies you could defeat. Real strength was about standing up when it would be easier to stay silent, about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, about showing others that courage was contagious. And sometimes the bravest thing a warrior could do was teach others how to be warriors too.